To complete the most significant news for this day, Y News continues. Here are the top stories. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources has ordered a temporary suspension on all quarry operations in the country. This is following a landslide that hit a sitio in Tinaan village in Naga City, Cebu, that has so far claimed 22 lives. Environment Secretary Roy Cimatu says operations will remain halted pending the completion of its review and assessment.
They remain suspended until such time that the review and assessment are completed of the quarry operations areas, especially the surrounding communities as far as safety is concerned from the impact of quarry operations and geo hazard.
Cimatu also ordered the relief of top executives of the Mines and Geosciences Bureau in Central Visayas following information that villagers have reported fissures in the mountain prior to the landslide. Naga City Mayor Christine Chong disclosed earlier that they withdrew the cease and desist order issued by the Apo Land and Quarry Corporation after MGB officials stated that the fissures were caused by a natural phenomenon. A special team has already been formed to probe the cause of the incident.
I have created a team composed of technical personnel from the Mines and Geosciences Bureau and the Environment Management Bureau to conduct an investigation to determine the cause of the landslide incident. And also, their mission also is to conduct the reassessment of the geohazard in Barangay Tinaan and the surrounding areas of Naga City in Cebu.
Meanwhile, authorities ordered a forced evacuation in the landslide hit Barangay Ukab in Itogon, Benguet due to potential landslides as rains begin to soak the already muddy slope. Rescuers and volunteers were ordered to leave the ground zero to limit the number of people in the site amid continuous downpour. Residents in surrounding areas were also advised to evacuate, and only miners as well as workers of volunteer mining companies will be allowed in the area. As of Friday, around 29 bodies have been recovered from the site, while 40 more persons remain missing. Heavy equipment and additional K9 units were also brought on site to speed up the search operations.
We will advise them to get out. Natuto na tayo, di ba? Kaya nga nagkaroon ng ganito eh. Na hindi nga sila nakikinig sa advice eh. But now, mayroon nang sabi ng AJB na active yung mga landslide na nakapaligid sa atin. So, only the authorized number of people na sinabi ko ng mga 30. At siyempre, mayroong PNP rito na babantay na wala makakapasok na dito.
A low-pressure area outside the Philippine area of responsibility has intensified into a tropical depression. Pagasa last spotted the weather system east of southern Luzon, but it is still too far to have any effect on the country. The LPA will be named Paeng once it enters the Philippine area of responsibility around Sunday afternoon. It is forecasted to develop into a typhoon while traversing the Philippine waters and may bring rains over extreme northern Luzon around Friday. Meanwhile, the Intertropical Convergence Zone, or ITCZ, is still affecting southern Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, bringing rains over Mimaropa, Calabarzon, Bicol, Zamboanga, and Caraga. Metro Manila and the rest of the country, meanwhile, will have isolated rain showers. And in other news, a doctor at the Philippine Children's Medical Center has died of severe dengue. In an exclusive interview with UNTV, health officials confirmed that the pediatric fellow died of complications from diabetes and dengue weeks after the virus transmission. 4 other PCMC physicians were also infected with dengue but were able to fully recover.
The possibility of transmission tumataas, at syempre mga doktor natin, mga selflessly serving talaga yan, na kahit anong oras nandoon sila. And unfortunately, recently itong buwan na ito, nagkaroon tayo ng 5 kaso ng mga doctors mismo natin na nagkaroon din sila ng dengue even while taking extra precaution.
Medyo nagkakasunod sila na parang may nagkaroon ng pattern na parang puro doctors, puro trainees, no? So ang aming assessment, mukhang doon sila sa isang area nag-work sa bandang outpatient department namin. Although we're looking also into their quarters kung saan nga probably yung pinanggagalingan ng lamok. As you know naman, ang PCNC is an open building, so talagang tagos-tagusan siya sa mga lamok na nagkikerry ng dengue.
DOH records show that from January 1 to September 1 this year, there are more than 100,000 listed dengue cases in the country, prompting authorities to remind the public anew to prevent dengue infection by cleaning and eliminating mosquito breeding areas.
We really just want to detect our patients very, very early. Sana lang basta po magkaroon na ng symptoms, magkalagnat o tsaka yung masakit yung katawan, magpatingin na po sa ating mga center, sa RHU or sa ating mga hospitals para po matest natin agad kung dengue ito o hindi.
Former Senate President Aquilino Coco Pimentel Jr. disputes the claim of former Senator Juan Ponce Enrile that no one was jailed or killed for criticizing former President Ferdinand Marcos during the martial law era. Pimentel says Enrile may have forgotten him as one of the thousands of Filipinos who suffered during those years. Pimentel says he was imprisoned 4 times during martial law and was even mixed with hardened criminals once while in detention because of his political beliefs.
Siguro nakalimutan niya ako, that's part of aging.
Pimentel's statement comes after a video of Enrile's interview was posted on former Senator Bongbong Marcos' social media account on the eve of the 46th anniversary of the declaration of martial law.
Name me one person that was arrested because of political or religious belief during that period. None.
They were all for
Name me
criminal
one
acts.
person that was arrested simply because he criticized President Marcos. None. Jovi Salonga, for instance. Oh, he was involved in the Light the Fire movement and many others. There were very few were arrested, and they were released. They were inconvenienced for a while, but they were released.
Pimentel also advises the young generations of Filipinos not to be deceived by people with hidden agenda to justify the excesses of the martial law regime.
The end never justifies the means. Otherwise, parati na lang mangyari that people will be deprived of their rights and freedom and liberties on the pretext that this is for your good, for the good of the rest of the people. So, we should resist that kind of an attempt.
24 villages in Marawi City have been placed under the watch list of the Philippine National Police for intense political rivalry. 2 villages were also considered election hotspots due to previous cases of election-related violence. In preparation for the special barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections on Saturday, 1,000 cops will be deployed to 33 voting precincts and other areas in the city to ensure peace and order during elections. Voting will start tomorrow from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. Authorities have yet to monitor any threats to the special polls, but security has been ramped up following the recent blasts in parts of Mindanao.
Sana ngayon na makapagbago na tayo dito sa Lanao del Sur, dito sa Marawi. Sana makatikim yung mga tao dito ng peaceful na elections.
And for the news abroad, here's Stephanie C. live from Hong Kong. Stephanie, good evening.
Good evening, William. Canada's parliament has voted unanimously to call the killings of ethnic Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar as genocide. Kath Dumaraos tells us why.
Members of Canadian Parliament across all parties adopted a motion that officially endorses the findings of a UN investigation which last month condemned mass killings and gang rapes of Rohingya by Myanmar's military.
And call for senior officials in the Myanmar military chain of command to be investigated and prosecuted for the crime of genocide.
The UN fact-finding mission said the crimes were carried out with genocidal intent and that the commander-in-chief and 5 generals should be prosecuted for the gravest crimes under international law. The vote in Canada's parliament happened the same day when UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on the Myanmar government to pardon and release 2 imprisoned Reuters journalists who had been reporting on the killings. Some 700,000 Rohingya have fled Myanmar into Bangladesh to escape the military crackdown. Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland told reporters in Washington, where she was attending NAFTA trade talks, that the vote in Parliament was an important step in Ottawa's efforts to seek justice for the Rohingya.
We are leading an international effort for justice and accountability for the Rohingya. Today's unanimous consent motion is a very important step in that effort. It's also been important that we have imposed sanctions on some of the Myanmar military officials directly responsible for this.
Earlier this week, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court said her office had begun a preliminary examination into whether alleged forced deportations of Rohingya from Myanmar into Bangladesh could constitute war crimes or crimes against humanity. Kat Dumaraos, UNTV News and Rescue.
An investigation is underway on the possible motives of a mass shooting that occurred at a warehouse complex in Maryland, USA, which authorities say is an unusual attack. Here's why from James Bontuyan.
A woman shot dead 3 people and injured 3 more before turning a gun on herself in an attack at a warehouse complex in Maryland, U.S. police say. The shooting happened on Thursday morning at a pharmacy distribution center in Perryman, near Baltimore. The attacker, Snochia Mosley, 26, died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The motive for her attack is unclear. The shooter was a temporary employee who reported for work as usual that morning, Harford County Sheriff's Office said. But shortly after 9 o'clock local time, she began shooting outside, then inside the facility, with a 9mm Glock handgun that she had brought with her. Police were on the scene within 5 minutes, by which time the shooter had killed 3 people and injured 3 more. Officers found the suspect in a critical condition with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. She died later in hospital. She was from Baltimore County, police said. She owned and had registered the handgun and had taken several magazines of ammunition with her, police said. Mass shootings by women are rare, with more than 95% of such attacks in the U.S. carried out by men. James Bontuyan, UNTV News and Rescue, Maryland, USA.
Dozens of people were killed after a ferry overturned on Lake Victoria in Tanzania. While in India, more than 30 passengers of Jet Airways were reportedly injured shortly after their flight took off from Mumbai Airport. Beverly Saison tells us why.
In Tanzania, more than 40 people have died after a ferry carrying hundreds of people capsized on Lake Victoria, Tanzania. One official said the number who drowned could be more than 200. Rescue efforts have been halted until dawn on Friday. The MV Nyerere ferry overturned near the shore between the islands of Yokora and Bugulora. It is thought the overloaded vessel toppled over when crowds on board moved to one side as it docked. Officials have said the ferry was carrying more than 400 passengers. About 100 people were rescued, while 32 are said to be in a critical condition. In India, more than 30 Indian passengers, some bleeding from their noses and ears, have received treatment after pilots forgot to turn on a switch regulating cabin pressure, officials said. Jet Airways Flight 9W697 from Mumbai to Jaipur turned back shortly after takeoff. Videos tweeted by passengers aboard the plane showed oxygen masks deployed inside the aircraft. The Boeing 737 was carrying 166 passengers landed safely. The Aviation Ministry said the cockpit crew had been taken off duty pending an investigation. And in Mexico, Mexico's President-elect Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador still plans to sell the presidential jet after spending 3 hours grounded on a commercial plane. Mr. Lopez Obrador vowed to press ahead with his plans despite being stuck on the tarmac because of heavy rain. The left-wing leader who won the presidential election by a landslide in July will be sworn in December. Mexico's deluxe presidential jet, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner costing $218.7 million, was delivered 2 years ago after being ordered by former President Felipe Calderon in 2012. Beverly Saison, UNTV News and Rescue.
And those are the news from the other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you very much, Stephanie C., live from Hong Kong. A superbike outpaced a fighter jet, a business aircraft, an electric car, and 3 sports cars in a 2-day test race at Istanbul's newest airport as part of Turkey's first aerospace and technology festival, dubbed as Technofest. A Challenger 605 aircraft, Turkish F-16 Tesla, PL-10000DL, Aston Martin, Elvora Formula One car, and Kawasaki H2R took part in the stunning high-speed race on 400 meters long or 248 miles runway. The superbike won the race, outpacing his rivals by 0.04 seconds. A Frenchman has earned the moniker the Reptile Man for living with not only one, but 400 scaly creatures under one roof. Let's find out his reasons for doing so in Leslie Longbowen's report.
For most people, sharing a living room with just one 2-meter-long alligator is the stuff of nightmares. But herpetologist Philip Gillette has 2. Named Ali and Gator, they stalked the 67-year-old Frenchman's house along with hundreds of other creatures, including some of nature's most maligned species, from rattlesnakes to tarantulas. Over 2 decades, the herpetologist has amassed a collection 400 strong in his unassuming house in a village on the banks of the River Loire. A cobra lives in the coffee table, a 50-kilogram tortoise roams the garden, and at night, Ali, the dominant alligator of the pair, sleeps with Gillette, while Gator keeps watch at the door. Gillette says the alligators were rescued from a leather farm, but most of the animals are pets that have outstayed their welcome, donated, or abandoned. After a childhood spent in the Central African Republic, Gillette became a hunter's guide, and knickknacks, including antlers and animal heads mounted on plaques, dot the walls of his home. But a change of heart made him vow to protect nature and educate a public fearful of animals that he says are not well understood.
I think it's unfair to treat these animals the way we do, because we don't understand them.
20 volunteers work for his association in Faune, which organizes 3 to 4 road shows a year to shopping centers around France to raise awareness.
Today, children can tell the difference between a lizard and a Pokemon.
In his basement, the walls are lined with vivaria packed with phobia-inducing animals which hum the sound of artificial lamps that don't come cheap. Gillette says his electricity bill is 2,000 euros a month. He says he has all the necessary permits to keep and transport the animals, and that the most dangerous snakes are kept in a room behind 2 sets of doors. He insists the locals don't mind their unusual neighbors and that they regularly pop in for coffee. But the local fire department is more cautious. They are under instructions not to enter his house in an emergency. Leslie Longbowen, UNTV News and Rescue.
And those are the reasons behind the news September 21, 2018. On behalf of Angelo Castro III and Rina Villamor Camara, I am William Theo. Because we need to know, we will always ask why. Good evening.